So this is the pre-test Cambridge vocabulary starter test, which measures the level of vocabulary in English of these preschoolers. So we have three levels: that approved, acceptable, and failure. The white bar is the control group, and the gray or black bar is about the experimental group. So approve, at 23% of control group of students approve this vocabulary test, and a 53% in the experimental group approve this vocabulary test. But remember, that is the results about the pre-test Cambridge. And the last one, and is the most worrying about this, the 38% in the experimental group had failed this vocabulary starters, and on the other group there was a 61% of students had failed this pretest. Then we have this table, which represents and make or made a connection and linking between attention, memory, vocabulary, that those are basic mental cognitive operations, and digital literacy, which implies the multimedia and generation alpha. And this figure shows all the authors and theory that are linking for acquiring a better understanding about these important things and elements in the English learning processes. As a result of the previous image, this is like the integration about all those concepts. As you can see, in the first triangle are the attention, memory, vocabulary. The second image is about the 5 categories related to this inquiry about the relation with multimedia, digital literacy, the visual learning among all these population that is alpha generation. This is the first part about the pre-test according to the Cambridge Assessment Starting Vocabulary Test. So we have the number of preschoolers, the control group, the experimental group, and the number of correct answers. So, for example, in this figure, any students can achieve the 5 correct answers. It means all correct answers in this first part. But I almost forgot to say that this Cambridge assessment test, it was about five parts, but I just took the writing and reading skills. So as you can see, this is the post test, but in the part 1. So it's the same methodology: number of preschoolers, number of correct answers, control group, experimental group. And this is, for example, in the experimental group, there is an increment of 20 students which can achieve to the all correct answers, because every part of this Cambridge test has five questions. So this is the part two of the pretest. As you can see, not all the students can achieve in the experimental group, and the control group nobody in the both groups. Almost the experimental group, 10 students can achieve four of 5 correct answers, and 0 students from the control group in the second part. But the post test, we can appreciate or see the increasement of the experimental group, which is the group that the researcher wanted to increase in all levels, because in this group the researchers use the multimedia based teaching lessons. So that is the tools that it holds to be helpful to the English learning and the process of cognitive English language learning. So this is the pre-test, but the part 3. As you can see, almost in the pre-test, nobody can achieve these 5 of 5 or all correct answers in any group. But we have in experimental group 11 students which can achieve the 4 correct answers. Between the in control group, there is only 8 students who can achieve or who achieve almost very well this test. But in contrary, the post test, any students of control group can achieve these 5 of 5 correct answers. But instead of the experimental group has 14 students which can achieve with all correct answers. So this is the pre-test, but the part 4, and those, for example, in the experimental group, just two students can achieve all the correct answers. In the control group, 0 students can achieve. So the flashcards, as we can see right now, the flashcards is not a very useful tool for teaching English vocabulary. In this case, for teaching vocabulary in preschoolers. And as you can see, there is 18 students in the experimental group who can achieve these Cambridge assessment vocabulary test with all correct answers, and in the control group, 0 students can achieve to these all correct answers. Even in the 4 of 5 correct answers, they didn't achieve it. So the last part is the part 5, the pre-test. It was easy for 2 groups, but obviously the experimental group has a better performance in their results, because they have 7 students with all correct answers, in contrary of control group, because they just have 3 students with all correct answers, but in the post-test 0 students on the control group, in the control group, have 5 correct answers instead of the experimental group. In this part, 20 students have the all the correct answers. Then we have again the pre-test Cambridge vocabulary assessment results, which is divided in approved, acceptable, and failure. So in this pre-test, the 38% of students fail this pre-test about vocabulary in the experimental group. In the other group, the 61% of students failed this Cambridge vocabulary test. So the final this final figure shows the post test about the vocabulary Cambridge test. So we can see in the experimental group that 92% of students approve this test. Obviously, this experimental group was implemented with the multimedia-based lessons. In the control group, was implemented the flashcards lessons, and you can see and you can observe the differences between the results, and the techniques and tools are different and more stimulating for these new generations. Conclusions. During this English language class implementation with multimedia and flashcards, the main finding was the proving of effectiveness of multimedia-based lessons as an advantageous resource or tool within the learning English vocabulary at the preschool level. Besides, multimedia is the responsibility of the improvement and increasing over the vocabulary recognition by the visual and oral way. First of all, it has to do with the perception, oral and visual, and this is one related to the attention span. Thus, the multimedia could have engaged motivation with the learning processes. Furthermore, the stored vocabulary and recalling imagery and the phonetic vocabulary association come from the visual learning field. Are some mechanisms or strategies that can be boosted by the visual learning. Also, the combination of audio and images, like in videos or animations, can simplify all the information received, which are properly characteristics for the alpha generation. And this is also a reason about it, the importance over this implementation of the digital literacies within the educational curriculum, especially in early childhood education. Likewise, with the data results show that reading and writing skills vocabulary increased with the experimental group. Secondly, this is the first step for boosting and engaging the research field within the characteristics of a teacher Because of this, as a teacher, they can make connections between teaching learning processes, between the emerging educational issues in the daily life over this educational context. Therefore, this is just a little contribution for the similar educational investigative field due to the variety of variables such as the material, the context, the methods or techniques, data collection, time issues, population, disposition, place of experiment among some others which always were within this investigation process. And for these reasons, the results can always vary by demonstrating and discovering other possibilities and or solutions that can be analyzed according to these specifications in which these variables arose. Finally, the impact of this research study is to demonstrate that the new generations need a new educative adjustment in the teaching learning process because of the fast changes over the technological tools which cover all the fields such as advertisement, entertainment, and the educational field. It will not the exception. Finally, the recommendations. So there are some authors and theories that they cannot or won't they don't want to support the multimedia tools or technological strategies for English learning language or any other learning processes with multimedia, because some of them said before 2-year-old zero screens because it has a lot of bad habits or incorrect habits in children, like inattention, addictions, impulsivity, decrease over vocabulary, and the impact of these videos or animations is not the attention. Instead of it is like the fascination. So thank you for watching this video. My name is Jorge Benavides. I'm representing the Universidad, Gran, Colombia, in Bogotá. This is my email address if you want to contact me.